Dustin the Diamond Poirier becoming the first man to ever finish Conor McGregor via strikes. Dustin getting it done in the second round. It was an artful performance, man. I thought that was such a great game plan from Dustin. And look, I'll come in here. I told you I thought Dustin was going to win the fight. I picked him. I said, though, that he was going to win a slugfest decision. I thought that this was going to be vintage Dustin Poirier, putting his head in the oven and let's just see, who can outsweat the kitchen. And really what it was just a great game plan that they executed. They gave Conor something to think about early on with the takedowns. And it wasn't even a matter of that it was super effective of wearing Conor down. I don't really think that was the case, but gave him something to think for, opened up the leg kicks, was able to really, really put some damage on that front leg for Conor. We know how important movement is to him, how speed is important to him. If you're going to look at a true advantage in this fight, Conor having the speed advantage, I think, was going to be one of the big factors. But they took out that so quickly. And I thought Dustin, look, there's a lot of talk right now on social media about Conor not looking himself and Conor not doing this and Conor, nobody likes the respectful Conor. Now all of a sudden the people who were sick of disrespectful Conor don't think he can fight the way. Look, guys, he's lost both ways. He's been the most disrespectful thing on the planet, and he's gotten choked out, and he's been super humble and nice, and he's knocked people out with his shoulder, and he's been super humble and nice, and he's been knocked out. Sometimes it has nothing to do with that stuff, and it just has to do with the style of the fighter, and you had a guy here in Dustin Poirier, and I honestly thought, to this, though, I thought that Dustin actually looked like he had a little bit of ghosts early on. If I was doing body language detective, I thought, like, looking at him early on, I thought you could see the weight of the event kind of hold on him again. And he's big in big events, but he hasn't been at a McGregor fight at this stage of fame before. And wasn't looking before on the Bruce Buffer intros. I can never remember if guys do that all the time or not, but I feel like I've seen him give Bruce fist bumps before, so I felt like he was almost trying to block out some of the noise. But I thought when he took that first real bomb left hand from Conor and he withstood it, and it was right near the center of the octagon, and then Conor hit him flush across the face with it. I thought once he ate that, game on. I thought that he was, I think at that point knew, I can withstand this. I am the different fighter. I am the better fighter. I am the guy that I said I have been, because you can talk it all up. You can go out here and you can talk about, I'm a different guy. I'm a different this and I'm a different that. And I think a lot of that stuff is true. I do think Dustin's a better fighter at 155. We've seen proof of that. He has been one of the best lightweights outside of Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's probably been the best lightweight on the planet. And I think tonight he's proven that. I think outside of Khabib, like, he's the guy. He's really, I think tonight, solidified himself as one of the greats in the UFC. And I think he's been overlooked so much in his career. I think that, for whatever reason, he's too nice. He's not a guy who talks a lot of bleep and all that type of stuff. I don't know, but I've found him to be one of the most entertaining fighters on the roster since this move to lightweight. And today he got to have his crowning moment. The one, the one blemish of his past, the old fighter that he was, he got to eradicate. He has a loss to Khabib. Khabib hasn't lost. So, and we don't know if Nurmagomedov's going to come back, but this isn't boxing. I don't judge guys basing on having one loss or one blemish. This guy is one of the UFC greats, point blank, period. And I think that's what was solidified today. I think if you could have some questions if he loses to a Conor McGregor twice in his career, you could say he was really good. I don't know if he was one of the greats. Every time he really got to the top, outside of maybe a cross path with Max Holloway, that he was that he wasn't quite that next level. And I think he can silence all doubters today. I think that all ends with his win over Conor McGregor. and being the first guy to put him away. And my God, I got to give a shout out to my guy, Dia Davis. I sent him a message on Instagram afterwards and letting him know. I said, you're a hell of a sensei, sir, because, the last time I talked to Dia outside of, just going to his gym at Boca Boxing District, which I was happy to see get a shout out from John Anik. Dia doesn't like when Dustin gets into these firefights. He doesn't like that he can out crazy everybody. And I think he believes that he can go out box everybody. The thing that I always marvel with Dustin is I think that even in the crazy, he's really, really precise and can still find those shots, but he does take a lot of damage. And today, he took some heavy shots from McGregor, but it wasn't like there wasn't any moment where you were like, whoa, this is trouble for him. And once he got into that second round, he really got into his. I mean, he was having fun in there. As soon as he hit him, I told you, he took that big left hand, get back into a mix of a combination. He hits him with a check hook, and he starts jawing at him. He's the one doing the talking to Conor. They were doing a little bit of jockeying when they were up against the cage somewhat with the dumb shoulder strikes that we saw make a return, and Dustin was almost trolling him with it. And look, Conor got a good one in there. That first round was close. I think most people had it for McGregor. I can see it go for Dustin if you take the takedown into it, because I do think that check hook brought something into it. But the big thing too was he was really putting damage on those legs. I mean, that really was. You take away Conor's speed, you take away his movement, you take away what really makes him special. Conor is not. He's the one who made up the quote. Where he's like, timing beats speed and precision beats power. It's something of that combination. He's never been a guy who's always said, "Oh, yeah, I'm the most powerful striker ever." At featherweight, he was. I mean, he was a monster at featherweight. He dwarfed over people. He really, really did. I mean, he towered over guys like Jose Aldo and Chad Mendez and Dennis Seaver and those types of Diego Brandao. Like, he towered over those guys. And he has a huge frame, and yeah, he was rattling their skulls, and he was able to carry that to the Eddie Alvarez fight. But he's just not as special the bigger he's gotten in his career. He's just not. I'm not one of these guys who likes to dump a guy. There's a lot of talk this week. Conor is almost underrated as a fighter, and you get to a certain point in your career where you're so overrated. It's, tough to be anything, eventually it'll balloon down to you'll get so many haters that you will become underrated. It's, I get what people were trying to do, but he was also an overwhelming betting favorite. I mean, the odds and the money were everybody was backing Conor in this fight. Nobody was backing Dustin Poirier really in the eyes of the betting public. And I think in that first fight with Dustin, I do think this, to the people who are saying, you don't like the nice Conor McGregor act, I do think a guy like Dustin, that genuinely can get to him. I think that if you made Dustin Poirier emotional, the only proofs we have of this are the Conor fight, and then really one of his lone blemishes at lightweight is the Michael Johnson fight, which was a super personal fight where he got really emotional and he ran into a big shot from a guy who's got a really ugly record, but is super powerful, explosive, and, anybody can get caught in this game. So to that effect, maybe you could say, hey, Conor blew it and he should have played more into, hey, I beat you. You're not going to be the same. I'm always going to be this. And yeah, he didn't go that route. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to get that Conor McGregor. Maybe he just doesn't feel clearly the only guy, and I'll always say this about Conor, the only guy that really gets his juices going like that right now is Nurmagomedov. That's it. Everybody else, it's kind of like, who could you build any animosity towards at this point? And where does he go from here? This is an interesting spot right now where this division is at, especially with how things played out in the co-main event. And I want to save more of that for next segment because I want to get into Michael Johnson and into Michael Chandler, and what he was able to do. But in regards to who is the man now at lightweight, that all depends. I mean, I guess if Khabib is going to fight, he said that he needed to be impressed by somebody tonight. Okay, so I guess that's gonna have. I guess I really can't save all of the Michael Chandler stuff in that regard. And that if you wanted to be impressed by the victors in the lightweight fights tonight, they were overly impressive. Michael Chandler had as good a UFC debut as anybody's had, and Dustin Poirier was the first man to ever knock out Conor McGregor. Beat him faster than you did. But I get it from Khabib's standpoint. You don't want to come back and you don't want to fight Dustin. You choked him out. It was a good scrap. Dustin nearly got him in a guillotine. I think the argument, though, would be now we've seen Dustin in a rematch. We've seen him eradicate a person that has beaten him and got the better of him, and that he does get better. He does take a game plan. We've seen this in a couple regards with Dustin, in that the Max Holloway fight, he took on, I think, a better Max Holloway, and really moved into a place where he really beat him worse in the fight that they fought each other, more so than when they were kids. Now we've seen him in the Conor McGregor rematch. I mean, clearly flipped the entire result of the thing. And so I think that is a decent argument for Dustin Poirier to get a Khabib fight again. And I take it. So let's get to the co-main event. You had the debut of Michael Chandler taking on Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker, of course, coming off that pretty brutal defeat to Dustin Poirier. That happened in last June. I remember that was on my anniversary. A lot of people thought that was going to be a showcase fight for Dan Hooker. Looked good through the first 2 rounds, and then Dustin really took it to him in the rest of the main in the rest of that bout. Michael Chandler beat him worse. Michael Chandler really put it on him. I'm a huge Michael Chandler fan. I was surprised by a couple things today. I think we were all surprised to hear the B word, Bellator, was mentioned out of Bruce Buffer's mouth. I don't think that's been done before, to my knowledge. I know John Anik mentioned it, but I'm not surprised by John. John's not like one to pull the wool over fans' eyes or anything like that. But Bruce mentioning that he was former Bellator lightweight champion, that shook me a little bit. I think it looked like it gave Mike a little pep in his step. He is an explosive fighter. I tell you what, I got excited by a couple of things, man. I got excited that Michael's out there. I was excited that Deerfield Beach got a little bit of shout out, my hometown, where he's now training. And was it Sanford MMA is where that whole crew is now. That place, they move left and right. The Henry Hooft boys. They're a traveling MMA circus. They're like move Lantana, Boca, Lake Worth, Fort Lauderdale, Deerfield Beach. Anyway, so Michael Chandler comes out and really just hits him with a hellacious, starts in the midst of the first round. About a minute passes by. Dan Hooker's really trying to go at him with these calf kicks. He's not hitting anything that's really of substance. Gets one onto his thigh, but not too bad. And I think Michael Chandler just kind of decides, F it. I don't think this guy's going to pull the trigger, because you could see that he was pretty frustrated in the first minute that Dan Hooker was posturing a lot. And I don't know if he was finding his range or whatnot, but really just wasn't attacking. So Michael Chandler, he was the one who decided to go attack. And hit him with a big right hand, a huge left hook. And that was all she wrote, man. Dropped Dan Hooker to the canvas. It was ground and pound from there on out. And it was an explosive debut for Iron Michael. He got himself the win you would want him to win. The way you would want him to win. After the way you've seen him compete in Bellator all these years. I mean, look, he's got a win over former UFC champion Eddie Alvarez. The guy is top quality, even with his losses to Pitbull, even with the weird thing with Primus with his foot falling asleep or whatever the hell that was. He had the goods, man. He's just too well rounded. He trains with absolute monsters, and I just felt like Michael Chandler was UFC quality for a long time. I understood why he went back. He could have made the move probably 3 years ago, but I understood why he didn't, because I think he wanted to come back I think he wanted to come over and he wanted to be a win away from the title, which is essentially where he's at right now. Dana White mentioned it at the press conference that the most logical thing right now with the title, because it sounds like, if we could step back, it sounds like Khabib's done. That Khabib is not going to fight. That he told Dana something to the effect of, let's be honest. Let's be honest. They are all tip machines. Tip, tip, tip. They beg me, please don't kill me. And he's saying, I'm going to cut above everybody. And look, for Nurmagomedov, that's fine. Everybody who wants to drag him back into this thing, and it feels very similar to GSP. It's not quite to the level, because I think GSP was starting to take on all the killers, and you could see, I think you could feel guys starting to catch up to him. With Khabib, it feels like, but GSP was still on blemish. With Khabib, he felt like he was getting better, and I think that the thing that's disappointing about us not getting Khabib is not that he doesn't want to fight anymore because you want to see somebody beat him or somebody who can solve the mystery. What actually is the thing that's sad about it is it feels like he's getting better, more confident with his skill set. He's almost got even more of an aura. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't like early on the Khabib train. I was a little bit like, this dude's always hurt. I remember, Alex Dano, who was really one of the guys who got me into MMA. He was like an OG Khabib fan. But like, bro, this guy's always hurt. Like, why are you so into the dude with the hat? I don't get it. So I was late to the party on Khabib, and even with like his title round, the guy I beat, who'd he beat? I'm like Donaldson, big Khabib Nurmagomedov. What has he done? And it took me. I was late to the party. I'm disappointed that he never fought Tony. That's for sure. But that last win over Gaethje, dude, where Gaethje was an absolute animal against Tony Ferguson. The guy that we always thought had the key. And not to MMA math it, but he went through Justin Gaethje like a hot knife through butter. It wasn't even close. It was the best we've seen him look. Because even Dustin gave him a little resistance, got him in the guillotine. Conor won a round against him. Ali Aquinta went the distance with him. Michael Johnson hit a shot, wobbled him a little bit. This performance against Justin Gaethje was flawless. Flawless. So I think it's disappointing because we don't get to see Nurmagomedov, as it feels like he's still in the midst of a prime and there's no real contenders there. Michael Chandler, I think the interesting thing was, did Michael Chandler, would he have done enough to earn a title shot? I've heard Khabib talk about Michael Chandler. He does not sound very impressed by him. Like, he's been very dismissive of Michael Chandler even coming into the UFC. So, and I think it was something to the effect of like, oh, remember how long I had to wait to get a title shot? Michael Chandler shouldn't get a title shot after one fight. He gets a title shot against me. Something to that effect. I don't remember the exact quote from him, but I remember him being very dismissive of it in the lead up to Gaethje. And, I get it, but I do think that he has a performance like that, and you do have the longevity and the greatness that is Michael Chandler outside of the UFC and Bellator. I mean, I'd be into it. I would love that fight. I think Michael Chandler has some tools that could make it happen. He has the wrestling pedigree. Some may argue, is it Gaethje 2.0? I think he's a little bit more willing to be well-rounded. Gaethje has that wrestling background. He never wrestles. He almost like was overcompensating for that in the fight with Khabib. So for Michael getting this performance, it was great. I think that you burst onto the scene like that. I think he had an excellent call. Everybody saw how charismatic he was, calling out Conor, calling out Dustin, calling out Khabib. I think he probably, if he's honest with himself, if I'm honest, I think that's probably, Dustin's probably the last guy that he wanted because, it's the least, I don't want to say least marketable because I think it's an excellent fight, but it's, he's in the rank of star power. He's third, and there's, that's just what it is. So I think for him, it's going to be, though, Dana made it sound like that's the championship fight. Dustin's not into it. He said after the fight, in his post-fight media that you can basically go, kick rocks with your division if you think Michael Chandler deserves to fight me for the championship. I gotta be honest with you, like, I was really hot on Michael Chandler afterwards, and I'm still. If you tell me the championship is for Michael Chandler versus Dustin Poirier, I'm still down. I love watching those guys fight. There's some of my favorite fighters to watch. I would say Dustin is my favorite fighter to watch. But Michael's up there, man. I love watching Michael Chandler. If Michael Chandler wasn't around, I don't know how many Bellator cards I would have watched over the past 5 years. That guy was a gatekeeper for that entire promotion. And I do think that he's UFC quality, but Dustin was steadfast that he has to get another fight. He is not fighting him, and that the fights that interest him are Conor for a trilogy fight or Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz one is interesting because Nate is floated both on Conor's tongue and it's floated on like, the Nate Diaz thing is always going to be fun because it's Nate Diaz. He's obviously going to be a great build-up for the fight. He's got a cult following of fans. You say anything wrong about the Diaz brothers, and you got a whole army of them who are just pissed at you. I'm not that into watching Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier. I'm not. I was into watching Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal. And, I thought Jorge Masvidal gave him the business. And I just think that the rivalry is a little bit more hot. Like, if it was Conor versus Nate is such a interesting series just because Nate Diaz is kind of the guy who stood up to the boogeyman. Like, he's always going to have this place in Conor's history. That's just different. And I just think that if you're going to do one trilogy or the other, I would go that route, and to Dustin's point, okay, he said that Charles Oliveira deserves a shot over Michael Chandler does. So gave a lot of props to Charles Oliveira. Look, that performance and the performances that Oliveira's been putting forth in this lightweight division, it's hard to knock the guy. Like I said, I'd like to see him go against one more primo guy at the top to really solidify it. But I get Dustin's argument. Dustin was basically saying that Chandler's win in the UFC is against a guy that I beat already. Now, he did obliterate him. I mean, Dustin didn't put him away. So he did beat him worse. Is that lingering effects from, the beating that Dustin gave to him? I don't know. I think actually it's going to be interesting because I think from him dismissing it, I feel like the fight actually gets a little bit more heat because Dustin could do the whole act of no disrespect, but you basically wanted to call him Bellator boy. He was almost like steps away from basically calling him Bellator boy. And I think that's actually going to bring more juice to the fight. And it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting what direction they go. This is the thing, though. He says that he wants to go the route of becoming undisputed champion. If they really put down, hey, you're headlining a championship fight, you're going to be the guy, fight Michael Chandler, will he really say no? I don't know. He seemed pretty strong about it tonight. Maybe they changed their ways of negotiations. Who knows? We'll see what ends up happening there. But Dustin was, Dustin was rightfully feeling himself tonight. I thought he also made a good point too with the little knock on Max Holloway, where Max was saying I'm the best boxer. And I said this last week. Max Holloway is a hell of a boxer. It'd be pretty silly to say that anybody is a better boxer in the sport right now than Dustin Poirier. I think the only guy that maybe can hold some candle to him is maybe Jorge Masvidal. You could argue. Somebody had another great one that they put on the YouTube comments the other day, and it's escaping me. But they had a really good one too. Oh well, it's gone. Stipe is another great one too. But I honestly think Dustin is. You saw today what his coaches see in him. You saw last night. You saw what his coaches see in him. You saw this the ability to make his opponent miss and dish out a lot of punishment. He's gone the realm of normally I'll take some punishment and then I'll dish out more punishment than the other guy gives to me. This time around is I'm going to take basically no punishment or very little punishment. Maybe I'll take 1 or 2, but I'm going to unload a lot on you. And he turned Conor into a meme. Everybody's, he's replaced Bernie Sanders in the span of 24 hours. Now you're going to see Conor in the background of all topics and all things. I'll give you some of the Twitter reaction from yesterday. I've known Dustin Poirier since his first or second fight in the UFC. I'm so happy for him. He's now one of the best fighters in the world. I remember speaking with Jorge after his win over Max and how proud he was. I mean, these guys train a lot. They're close weight classes. They were really the guys who had each other's back. I mean, they got Colby Covington kind of kicked out of American Top Team, but they were the ones who had each other's back. Dustin said he would never fight George because George and him trained to get each other better. So I thought that was pretty cool. Shout out from Jorge. Here's some of the other reactions we had on Twitter yesterday. Khabib Nurmagomedov. Here's what he had to say on Twitter. He said, this is what happened when you change your team, leave your sparring partners who made you a champion, and sparring with little kids far away from reality. He was doing a training in Portugal. I believe that's in reference to with Conor McGregor. So definitely taking some delight in the fact that Conor lost. And I think Dana said that this was the second biggest pay-per-view of all time that they've done. And look, it does blow up some stuff for Conor. There was some talk that he was going to fight Manny Pacquiao. I was talking about this with Peter Kahn this week on the show. And Peter we were all thinking that this was the route it was going to go with it sounded very likely that fight was going to happen. And if you're Manny, this is a little bit of an interesting wrinkle because you fight Conor, who just got outboxed by, an MMA fighter. The best boxer maybe in MMA, but nonetheless, he got outboxed by an MMA fighter. What do you think is going to happen when he fights Manny Pacquiao in a boxing match? And so, yeah, Conor's invincibility has taken a bit of a hit, but I don't. I think it took a hit after the Nate Diaz fights. I think Conor is going to have the ability to, if he has the right fight, people are going to want to watch him fight. I do think that he probably has to turn the viciousness on a little bit. I think people may want to see him crank up the animosity a little more. I don't know if he's that guy. That's an interesting one to get part. If I had to say which one probably makes the most sense for Conor at this point, I'd guess it's the Nate Diaz fight. He mentioned that he was still interested in it. Nate's looking for a dance partner. I think that makes some sense. I don't know really what it does for him ranking-wise, but I think it's a fight that fans will be into. But Nate's also a guy, like he's lost, he lost to Jorge, so I don't know how much people will give Conor credit for getting the wins. He needed I think Conor did need a win against somebody who was at the top of lightweight. Beating Cowboy is great, and I love Cowboy as much as the next MMA fan. Who doesn't love Cowboy Cerrone? But we all know that he beat a guy who was on his back nine. Like, we do know this. And, shoulder strikes and all, and beating him in 40 seconds. Look, that's all great. But you beat a guy who is way past his best days. Way past his best days. Dustin's not. If you would have beaten Dustin Poirier, that's the guy right now at lightweight. I don't know if there's anybody better that could have proven Conor. Unfortunately for Conor, it is a guy that he did beat around, so I'm sure there's people who could still take a big dump on that too. So I think for him, yeah, the Nate fight makes a lot of sense. Tony, I think that would be fun because they're both coming off of losses. I think there's a lot of stake for both guys in that fight for sure. Maybe, and if it's not, I think the other thing that's interesting though, I do think that if Conor gets a win and let's say, Michael Chandler or Dustin Poirier is the guy who becomes champion, both of those matchups are fine for Conor to get back in there to win the belt because him and Dustin are 1-1. This one would be for the title. And him and Michael Chandler's a fresh matchup. So I don't think Conor's as far away. You're never as far away in mixed martial arts as you think you are. It really takes you to be hammered home. Like, you have to be beaten soundly. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, seeing Tyron Woodley, like his last 3 fights, and he really hasn't been in there for like 15 straight rounds or something like that. You're like, this guy's not quite the same anymore. Tony, I think, is teetering towards that because we watch him against Gaethje and we watch him against Oliveira. You're like, I don't know if this guy's still what he is. Like, he's up there in age. I don't know if he's quite as good as he was when we all thought he was bar none the best lightweight on the planet. And, you know, Conor, since he's been at 155, it's been, you know, he had the series with Nate, won his championship. You know, and I think some of that, some of that has to in history be remembered. Like, he was supposed to go up, fight Rafael dos Anjos right away for the championship. RDA pulled out and he fought Nate Diaz on short notice at a catch weight and lost that fight. Was able to avenge it and came back in and beat Eddie Alvarez to win the belt. So I think all that should be given props to Conor. I get the whole ride to Floyd and whatnot, but you know, since then, you know, it's tough to judge. It's not a lot of action. And that was one thing that was a big theme this week was a big theme after the fight was that, you know, he wants to stay active. He needs to stay active. And I think one of the problems is, well, what does the UFC do with him? Because they are in this spot where we're not quite sure if we are going to have fans. I think in some places they could, I mean, look, hey, Dana, I don't know if you know this, Canelo's fighting here in a couple weeks. So I'll get to that in just a second. Canelo's fighting here in a couple weeks, bro. Like, maybe bring the hub down to South Florida where the fans are allowed. I'm just saying, baby. You know, you ducked us for so long. Now come down here. He begged me, please, let me have my fights here, please. I'm just saying. You know, he's talking about like he's worried about the new administration and all that type of stuff. Sounds like Dana White's ready to move to Abu Dhabi, to be honest with you. I don't know. But yeah, I do think that for Conor, they do got to keep him active. How active? When is he going to be back in there? I don't know. I mean, that was a pretty brutal knockout that he took, dude. So I would say probably the prudent thing for a guy like him is to take at least a few months off, like to not fight until June, July. And, you know, yeah, I think a Nate Diaz fight makes sense. I think I wouldn't be opposed to that. As far as the Canelo thing, let me mention that because that was some pretty big local news. You know what? I got to say, I give a lot of crap to DAZN and to the boys over there. But I will say, thank you for bringing us so much boxing. That is cool. And we are finally going to get one that is going to be down here. So Canelo Alvarez, it was announced, he is going to be fighting at Hard Rock Stadium on February 27th against Avni Yildirim. He is mandatory for the WEC title. It's Canelo's first fight in Miami. And according to, this is from Cam Wolf, who does boxing and covers the Dolphins, by the way. He says tickets will be sold for fans in attendance to capacity. To capacity. I found that to be very interesting wording. So am I to believe that if 70,000 people want to show up and watch Canelo Alvarez, 70,000 people can watch Canelo Alvarez fight boxing match? Because I think what that's telling you is, yeah, we don't think Canelo Alvarez versus dude is going to sell any more than like, what's the most that could sell? 30,000? We can make that work. That's the way I read it. Because if you're telling me that Canelo Alvarez, let's just say Canelo Alvarez, biggest boxer on the planet, you're telling me if 70,000 people wanted to buy tickets, 70,000 people could buy tickets? I find that a little hard to believe. But it does sound like that means a lot of people are allowed to be there, should a lot of people buy tickets. And that's pretty cool because with these Matchroom and DAZN ones, they've been closed shows. You haven't been able to go. So that's pretty badass that Canelo Alvarez is going to be here. Yeah, it's not against the creme de la creme, but, you know, it's still Canelo Alvarez. He's going to be active, and that's pretty cool.